to call the general committee meeting to order. May I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended, which is the additional delegation that we had submitted at the last minute. We need 2/3 majority to vote is required to permit an additional delegation. Can I get a motion? Councillor Humphries, Councillor Kim? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call to vote. Approved? All in favor? All opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Okay, so we have one community presentation this evening. Presentation is Shelley Ware, and she's the Recreation Supervisor. Special events regarding Festivals and Events Ontario Awards. Please state your name and be reminded that you have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of Council. My name is Shelley Ware, and I have the privilege to work in the Special Events Division for the town. Tonight, we have some achievements to celebrate. Festivals and Events Ontario produces the top 100 festivals and events in Ontario list. The events that make this list are considered to be exceptional in the industry. For 2018, all kinds of events across all corners of Ontario were evaluated by industry specialists. This year, there were 4 events recognized in York Region, 1 in Richmond Hill, 1 in Vaughan, and 2 in Aurora. Fortunately, Aurora's Haunted Forest has made the list, and also Aurora's Christmas tree lighting ceremony will continue to be included in this distinguished list. Everyone is busy. Our days are full, our weekends are fuller, so what motivates people to attend these events when so free little time is available? It's because people want to have meaningful experiences that create memories, that connect us together. Aurora's Haunted Forest and Aurora's Christmas tree lighting ceremony have been successful in doing just that, creating those meaningful moments, experiences, and memories. However, it takes a great deal of support to create these experiences. Both of these signature events have community partnerships with extensive volunteer engagement. Aurora's Haunted Forest has many organizations involved, including the Aurora Seniors Association, Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, Marquee Theatre, Optimist Club, and the Youth Engagement Committee. For the Christmas tree lighting ceremony, the partners include the Aurora Seniors Association, Aurora Cultural Centre, Historical Society, Marquee Theatre, Salvation Army, and the Youth Engagement Committee, to just name a few. The number of volunteer hours between just these 2 events is more than 1,700 hours per year, and more than 70% of those volunteers return year after year. Although events create memories and community connections, they are also economic drivers. Event attendees are purchasing fuel, picking up snacks, and comfort supplies in Aurora, to name a few. Both events are attracting, on average, 35% of visitors into Aurora. These guests contribute to the local economy. As well, local shelters benefit from the Gently Used Clothing Drive, which is incorporated in Aurora's Haunted Forest, and the Aurora Food Pantry benefits from the Christmas market. Both of these events have been happening for more than a decade, so keeping them fresh involves creativity and innovation to continually raise the overall experience, ensuring that attendees return each year. As well, the creative process for the following year usually starts right then and there while the event is happening and continues straight through to the next year. Town staff and all of our community partners are steadfast in ensuring that our event offerings are on trend and become events that are known as must attend. Since the inception of the Haunted Forest, many towns in York Region have created a Halloween-themed event, and they've actually come to the town for support to learn best practices and to try to model components of their event to ours. Despite similar efforts being developed, Haunted Forest remains unique and has not been replicated in York Region. The Christmas tree lighting ceremony is a common event in many municipalities, but we strive to be unique by providing the opportunity to see both Santa and Mrs. Claus. The on-site reindeer are actually more popular than Santa, and the back-to-back different fire juggler shows captivate all ages, ensuring that this event is worth staying home in Aurora and inviting your friends and family to travel to Aurora versus having to travel further into the GTA for these such experiences. Festivals and events not only recognize as distinguished events, but they also recognize the importance of volunteers and their impacts on events. FEO has recognized 2 volunteers which have made significant contribution. Louise Knuth has been volunteering with Aurora's Haunted Forest for more than 7 years and consistently has Halloween on her mind. She works tirelessly throughout the year on the upcoming one. In the rain, sleet, chilly temperatures, Louise is always there from setup to takedown and again the following day. Congratulations to Louise on this well-deserved award. FEO has also recognized a familiar face, our very own Sarah Teenekamp, for Aurora's tree lighting ceremony. She's our parks manager, but she's also a dedicated volunteer on her own time for countless years, and her contributions seem to expand every year. She and I actually went to the Distillery District in 2017, and by the time we made it back to Aurora, we were exploding with ideas. Sarah's creativity and can-do, get-it-done, enthusiastic approach has been instrumental in creating stellar event enhancements, but also in motivating other staff, some whom are now volunteers. The events that the town produces are only made possible by the support from you, Mayor Marakis, and members of council. Special events are celebrations that bring people together. Your continued support enables the Special Events Division to deliver innovative, high-quality, and must-attend special events with solid community partners throughout the year. We continue to design our events with a promise for enjoyable experiences for individuals and families alike, while creating connections and memories for generations to come. Tonight, with tremendous pride, I would like to ask Mayor Marakis to present Louise Knuth and Sarah Teenekamp with their much-deserved recognition certificates.
Can I say so?
What do I put on?
Thank you, Shelley. I'm just going to ask if all of council can come because
Absolutely.
I mean we're all a team, so
Absolutely.
I would appreciate it. Thank you, council, if you could all join me.
This tree lighting ceremony into the top 100 list for 2019.
Thank you, Ms. Ware. That was lovely. May I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Humphreys. Any questions or comments to the presenter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shelley, thank you, for everything that you do and the team, Sarah, Louise, everyone that works on our special events in our town. I think we are the envy of York Region, possibly the GTA. As I said before, I think a lot of people would love to come to our town and pluck a few of our special events team away from the town of Aurora because of the events that we do put on. So we appreciate everything you do, and I know our residents do. So thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for what you do for our town.
Councillor Thompson.
Just want to echo those sentiments. Shelley, you and your team have done a fantastic job since I've been on council in 2010. You continue to raise the bar year after year, and certainly grateful for all you do for the community and for the town as well. And so thank you, and please extend those congratulations and appreciation to the rest of the team.
And Councillor Humphreys, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Shelley, I can't thank you enough for all you do and your team. Just like the mayor said, you continue to raise the bar. I could just see you and Sarah coming back from the Christmas market going, we'll do all these things, and you did. We had a beautiful Christmas market this year. Mayor Maracas put forth that idea, and you guys exceeded our expectations by building those beautiful wooden covered protection areas. Sarah was teaching us how to build beautiful Christmas urns, and honestly, the talent in this town is unbelievable, and you help showcase them all. And our Haunted Forest is incredible, keeps getting better every year. And I won't tell everyone the story from the beginning, but it was awesome. It was a great first one, unexpected, that we thought no one would. How many would show up, and we had, I don't know how many, 1,000 or something. And we were doing $5 at the door, and everybody giving us $4 at the door and giving us $5. So where do we find the change? It was a great learning experience, but it's just, you've just exceeded all our expectations, and thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. We love it.
Councillor Gartner.
Shelley, you know how I feel, and I know it always embarrasses you, but this time you can extend congratulations to all of your staff. They work very hard, and we appreciate it.
No other comments? Okay, I just wanted to add thank you so much for coming and delegating tonight. I just love everything you do. The markets and the events just seem to keep getting better and better and better. And I just kind of wanted to mention to council and the audience, I remember the busload of people that showed up for Easter who heard about the event. I think they might have been from Scarborough, I'm not sure, but they all came up in a bus and came to work. So it was such a wonderful place. So you're doing something right. Thanks. Okay. Okay, so can I call a vote? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Delegations. Okay, so we have 3 delegations this evening, and as council, we always love to hear feedback from the public. However, I want to ask you all to do so respectfully. Delegation up is Sina Daniele. So if you can please state your name and be reminded you have 5 minutes for your delegation. You'll receive a signal at 1 minute remaining in your allotted time.
Thank you. My name is Sina Daniel, and I live at 48 Royal Road. I love my home and have raised my 3 kids in this community. I am here once again to get your support and understanding to exclude our pocket of Royal Road from the stable neighborhood study. I have petitions signed by my neighbors, and I will submit and am speaking on their behalf. I am not here to speak on the entire study as it is beyond my control. To summarize, our unique and special pocket of Royal Road between Cameron Avenue and Edward Street consists of 19 homes, all with consecutive lot frontages of 70, 80, 90, and up to 100 feet. I am asking to be exempted from the proposed zoning bylaw changes as we are the outliers. We do not and will not have the vertical massing issues for the very simple reason that all of the 19 consecutive lots have large lot frontages. I have already reached out to many of you and am now asking you to exempt us tonight. The proposed unprecedented, unreasonable, and unfair changes to our pocket were either an oversight or a mistake, which need to be corrected immediately. We do not have issues and will never have issues based on the current zoning bylaw, which bylaw we relied upon when purchasing our large frontage homes. This proposed zoning bylaw is capping our maximum footprint to 2,540 square feet, inclusive of garage. A reasonable person cannot argue that the maximum footprint on two completely different lot frontages be exactly the same. All of the homes in our pocket have 50 to 100% wider lot frontages and are not consistent with the other lots in the study. By reducing the coverage and also capping it is in fact reducing our coverage by 35% compared to what we are allowed today. In addition, you are taking away our rights to a 3-car garage on such large frontages. Where else in the GTA are residents with comparable lot frontages prohibited from having a 3-car garage? I could not find one. This is extreme and excessive and takes away our rights and enjoyment of our properties. It is also takes away the possibility of building a decent-sized bungalow, which is discriminatory. I have been asking in vain for reasonable explanations to justify these changes to our pocket, but as yet I have not heard one. So I reached out to Dave Waters, who recommended that I speak to Ron Palmer from the Planning Partnership. I was able to get in touch with him. He explained that he was given a specific task by the town to conduct this study and give recommendations based on that. He also explained that the recommendations that he provided were based on averages and were generic, but open to modification from what I could understand. He also explained that in these studies, there are often anomalies, deviation or departure from normal, and as such, some homes do not belong and should be taken out. This makes sense and it clearly applies to our pocket, but somehow was overlooked. Also, I have carefully reviewed the study on your website conducted by Lawrence Cook, dated January 2019, which directly contradicts many explanations that have been offered to me. I have been told that other areas in the GTA have had similar studies. So I reviewed specifically section 5.0 of your study with regard to the approaches taken by other municipalities, specifically lot coverages. So City of Brampton appears, from what I understand and can read, to have lot coverages of 30%. Halton Hills is 40% for a 1 to 1.5 story, 35% for a 2-story. Newmarket, 35% for 1 story. Town of Richmond Hill, 35%. City of Burlington, 35% for 1 story, with no caps. Our coverage based on the cap of 2,540 square feet works out to be less than 22% coverage, and that includes garages and porches. Based on your own study, your proposed changes to our lots are unprecedented and extreme. I can't find anything similar in the 905 area. Our large lot frontages were never taken into consideration, and pushing this zoning bylaw through without thorough and thoughtful consideration of our pocket is irresponsible. Some have suggested we could always apply for a minor variance. Why should this entire pocket be subjected to additional costs, uncertainty, consulting fees, and ultimately no guarantee of anything when you could easily correct this now? In closing, I have stated most of my legitimate, fair, and reasonable concerns. I ask you, Mayor and Council, to please exempt our pocket from the proposed zoning bylaw changes tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Danielle. May I have a motion to receive and refer comments to delegation? Councillor Humphreys? Councillor Gartner? Any questions or comments for the delegate? Mayor Maracas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming this evening. Do you have a specific square footage number in mind that you think is acceptable for the area?
I think what is in place is acceptable.
So roughly 7,200 square feet for a home?
I was referring specifically to a bungalow, and what you're proposing is unreasonable. And I am comparing these percentages, these lot coverages, from the lot coverages that your town provided in their study, which seems to be consistent with all the other areas: Burlington, Halton Hills, Brampton, Newmarket.
And so you mentioned all those different areas. Did you happen to check Maple?
It's not in your study. I didn't see that.
I know, but did you happen to check? Well, as councillors, as mayor, as councillors, we check many different areas that are not necessarily
Did I
in
check
there.
Maple?
We do our
No.
Yeah, and so they're at 20%, just to let you know. lot coverage.
Okay,
And they're
so-
at the same lot sizes that you're at currently.
Okay,
so,
and?
it's probably one of the most desirable areas in Maple to live in.
I don't agree.
That's fine. That's your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right, and delegation B is Ronald Miller. If you could come to the podium, you have 5 minutes. Please state your name and your address, and you'll be signaled at the 1-minute mark to let you know how much time you have left. You have 5 minutes? Yes, you do.
5 minutes.
If you could state your name and your address, Mr. Miller?
Okay, the true value of our stable neighborhoods revisited. And I'll just go back to my second paragraph. The existing OP had protected these small homes in size and scale and provided owners the ability to create rental apartments. As planners for the town of Aurora, you have a professional responsibility to act in the highest and best interests of the community's well-being. Many of these small homes in the stable neighborhood study areas have full basements with basement apartments. These basement apartments make it possible for young families to purchase a first home while gaining rental income to augment their mortgage payments. These rental apartments make it possible for our children to remain in their hometown. These rental apartments also make it possible for handicapped persons receiving community assistance to live in affordable quarters. Councilors, do you really wish to remove the valuable stock of multiple dwelling accommodations? Then what? A better solution for providing affordable accommodations would be to incentivize owners with undeveloped basements. This recommendation considers provincial legislation for property intensification and the wonderful balance of existing housing in the town of Aurora. Realistically, what are the chances of someone buying a 3,000 to 4,000 square foot new home and creating a basement apartment? As you probably know, the vast majority of homeowners in the study areas are opposed to destabilization of their neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. May I have a motion to receive and refer comments of the delegation? Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gartner. Any questions or comments for the delegate? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Delegation C, Lenore Presley, representing Aurora Heights Ratepayer Association, Regency Acres Association, and Town Park Ratepayers Association. Regarding the stable neighborhoods, please state your name and your address. You have 5 minutes, and you will be notified at 1 minute time allotted time.
Okay. My name is Lenore Presley, and I have lived at 85 Harrison Avenue, Aurora, since 1973. My delegation tonight is representing the 3 ratepayers groups, Aurora Heights, Regency Acres, and Town Park, with regard to the recent June 4 Stable Neighborhood Report that resulted from questions and concerns about the consultant's plan that was discussed at the May 28th council meeting. Overall, we were satisfied with much of the June 4th report, but do have some concerns. I'd also personally like to thank the Town Planning Department for providing the additional information that we requested at the council meeting on May 28th. In the June 4th report, the planning staff has recommended the original size for new builds be 3,993 square feet as per the consultant report. This is in spite of the results of using the same available data and checking the results using the median and weighted variables. This is the chart that was submitted with the June 4th report with regards to median and weighted. In particular, the use of median and the application of weighted variables based on community size better reflects the characteristics for each study area. As indicated on Table 2 of the June report, the weighted average is 3,849 square feet, while the weighted median is substantially lower at 3,216 square feet. Regarding the zoning standards, the consultant's report recommended building height to be 9 meters to the midpoint of the roof, in spite of the fact that many other municipalities, including Toronto, have the height restriction to 9 meters to the top of the roof. We feel that this is more appropriate to keep the building from overwhelming the other much lower buildings in the area. We also request that there be some separate regulations for flat roof builds. Otherwise, we are in agreement with the zoning standards as indicated in the report. We did, however, find some incorrect information in the report, some of which may be considered minor, and that was spoken to by Sandra earlier. But there's one glaring error in the use of the apartment building at 71 Victoria Street as the largest home in the area. Over here, okay. Are you ready? Okay. This is the home that you have indicated. Not moving, I'm not going the right way, there we go. Is a home. And as you can see, it's an apartment building. While there was a home at that site until the late 1990s, the original home was demolished and an apartment building containing 9 units was built at that time. I remember this because it was just prior to the time that Trinity Aurora Church was building its new church. Since our town park area is zoned R3, it does not include apartment buildings in this area, and an apartment building is not a single-family dwelling. Also, according to the zoning map, I have it is zoned as RA2, and it's outside the R3 area. The R3 area actually stops at Metcalf to the north and also excluded some of the homes on the south side of Metcalf. Other concerns that were noted from the report are some data points on Table 1, page 2 of the June 4th report, which that's what Sandra has already spoken to, so I won't continue with that. Considering the major errors in using an apartment building as the largest home in the area to determine the size of the new builds in all 3 areas, which would substantially bias the results in favor of larger homes, one would think it advisable to redo the whole calculations using accurate data. That having been said, our community would like this stable neighborhood issue to be resolved as quickly and fairly as possible. To this point, I would add that our group's executive members were told in a meeting with the planning staff that it is a 10% adjustment that can be made to the results without going through another public planning meeting. So instead of going back to the beginning and redoing the whole process because of inaccurate data, we are asking council to direct planning to use the weighted average of 3,949 square foot as indicated on Table 2, page 3 of the June 4th report, and roll back that GFA by 10%. This would be a fairer result and still allow the largest house size to be significantly bigger than most of the homes in the 3 areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to receive and refer comments to the delegation? Councillor Humphries, Councillor Kim. Any questions or comments for the delegate? Mayor Marakis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Lenore. Lenore, thank you for coming, first of all. So basically the number that you're looking at for a GFA is 10% minus subtracted from 3993.
That's correct.
And so
Sorry, what did you say?
3993.
No, 3849, the weighted average.
So we're roughly looking at your number basically is about 3,500 roughly. I'm not going to do the number right now, but that's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. We have no consent agenda items tonight. So moving on to the advisory committee minutes. May I have a motion to receive the advisory committee minutes? Mayor Maracus, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions on item A1, but they could be held till the end of the meeting.
Okay.
No?
No, you know. Oh, now is the time.
Thank you. I'm looking at A1, page 2. With respect to number 2, the roundtable discussion, through you, Mr. Mayor, or through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Clerk, when any committee recommends that this says specifically accessibility items 2018 to 2024 of the accessibility plan for captioning to be included for streaming of council and committee meetings. And the committee has suggested we are going to get the money from. So is that now something that goes forward and is done?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Chair, it will certainly come before council. I'll be speaking with the accessibility advisor about what the committee is recommending here, and it wouldn't be approved by receiving the minutes, and we would bring it to likely a capital budget discussion.
Councillor Gartner?
Through you to Mr. CEO. Mr. CEO, because they have suggested how this can be done with respect to funding, they're going to remove some items from the accessibility list and reallocate the money, the $15,000 to this. It's a little bit different. I know, Mr. Clerk, we don't usually have things like this, but because we're not really talking about money, finding money, because the longer we wait for the closed captioning, the more people will be disadvantaged, or the faster we do this, the more it would be acceptable for those with accessibility issues. Could we just go ahead and do this, or could a report come to council?
To you, Madam Chair, at the very least, something would have to come to council, as this would be a reallocation from what council has actually approved to the budget process, I presume. So I'll take a look at the actual intent of the committee's recommendation and figure out how best to bring it before council.
Thank you very much. It would be great to get this done in the next few months until waiting after the budget process. Thank you. On page 4, number 4, my understanding from reading this, it's about the changes to 2 social assistance programs. I get the feeling that the committee was quite unhappy about the changes that are going to be made. Perhaps through you, Madam Chair, perhaps you could just make a brief comment on that?
Absolutely. So one of the members works with one of the social assistant legal aid departments and had been quite aware of the changes that were being put forth with the social assistance that is available for people with disabilities. So she provided a presentation to make us aware of what those changes would be. There were some things that we weren't really happy about that we had learned, and she plans on providing council with a presentation that we could read and go through and support. It was really meant for awareness and allowing the community to understand what those changes were, and apparently there has been some more changes. So I have asked for that report from her, and at that time I can report that back to council.
Thank you. And it is practice of committees, if they have comments to make, to send them to the appropriate agency or person. Through you, Mr. Clerk, I don't think there's anything prohibiting a committee from weighing in on an issue.
Mr. Clerk?
We wouldn't, through you, Madam Chair, we wouldn't advise that, we should if the committee feels strongly enough, it should be the staff member writing a report that goes through council, so council can
Yes.
adopt the recommendations of the committee, rather than the committee reaching out directly to an agency.
Thank you. I don't know if it's time sensitive, it may be too late, but through you, Madam Chair, could you, as chair of that committee, could you recommend to staff that that report be prepared for council as soon as possible?
The report was going to be written by the sister, not the staff, but by the sister was electively going to provide a report to present to council because it's currently prepared by her company, and so she did not want to present that specifically for council. She's going to write something else.
Thank you. According to what Mr. Duran said, perhaps she could work with the staff member for that committee and get something going.
Mr. Clerk? Yep, certainly. Okay,
Thank you.
moving along. Questions or comments? All in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Okay, so that brings us to our regular agenda items, and that brings us to R1, and I believe the Director of Planning, Mr. Waters, would like to have a few words before we get started.
Can we add R5 to that?
Through Madam Chair, certainly, if if that's the will of the committee tonight, we can include both or receive both reports and then have the rest of the R1 recommendation available right now, just like this.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Everybody's good with that? With the vote? Good, all right, let's proceed. Mr. Waters?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The purpose of tonight's report is to present final recommendations to amend the town zoning bylaw to introduce zoning standards for stable neighborhood study area. In addition, we have provided a supplemental report that presents the consultant's methodology and additional data in accordance with the direction received at the May 28th council meeting. The zoning standards in this report, along with the design guidelines, were presented to a public planning meeting on March 27th, 2019. The zoning standards from the March 27th report have not been amended by staff, and where they've been amended, have been amended to improve clarity regarding definitions to assist with implementation, working together with the draft guidelines. Council can choose to remove any of the proposed standards, but any revision should maintain the intent of the zoning standards presented at the March public planning meeting. Any new zoning standards introducing any new zoning standards or introducing zoning standards for each of the 4 stable neighborhood study areas will result in another public planning meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Can I put a motion on the floor to receive the item 1? And a staff recommendation. Mayor Maracus? Any seconders? Councillor Humphreys? Any questions or comments? Councillor Gartner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've since learned that there's many different ways to do statistical analysis. And using the median method and weighted averages, certainly in circumstances like this, are quite acceptable. Our consultant has used averages. Our delegate, I think, has come up with a very reasonable and certainly to me acceptable methodology, which would be looking at, we'd be looking at R5. We'd be looking at R5, page 3. So the compromise would be to use the weighted averages that have been calculated. the weighted, using the weighted method and the average method. So we're getting some, the residents are getting some of what they want, which is using the weighted method. And we are going with, in that context, the average calculation that the consultant figures is appropriate for this study. And as the median and weighted could have been used from the beginning, both being respected statistical methods, and in light of the fact that we were not able to get the raw data, and I know council felt very disturbed, I would say, about having to have an FOI to get raw data that actually belongs to the town, and we have in a spreadsheet. So we weren't able to get that data, but it's interesting that we do have on R5, we have it on page 9, something to me that is glaringly strange, that in the Town Park area, when the consultant was calculating the largest home without the new builds, a 9-unit multi-dwelling apartment was used as the largest unit. I don't understand that at all. We're talking about R3. We're talking about predominantly detached homes. There are some attached homes in our study. But if this is one piece of raw data that's been used, and it's so glaringly strange, I think the residents have had an onerous task through all these months to try and get something done that is actually in our official plan. And they've worked so hard, and they've endured so much frustration. I think I don't agree with them, because I would like to go back and have the data looked at and do the study areas separately. And we would have to go to a public planning meeting. That would be my choice. But I think the residents have shown, well, they've just shown what they're made of by saying, okay, we'll accept a compromise here. And I think that's a compromise that council can certainly, well, I think we can do it. And the 10% ask, well, there have been some issues with the process. There have been some issues with the kind of statistical analysis that was used. We don't want to go back to the beginning, but I think there's reason and cause to use a 10% reduction in the square footage based on weighted average.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions, just coming off of Councillor Gardner's last comment. If we were to approach that, through Madam Chair, are we able to move forward if we take the weighted average, less 10%, and not have a public planning meeting? Can we get that validated?
Mr. Waters?
It's a reasonable request. I just wanted to know.
Through you, Madam Chairman, I would respond by saying that this is more than a statistical analysis. It's a planning study that uses data to inform the outcome and the recommendations. I would suggest that we rely on the consultant's methodology, which is very customized and experienced for this type of study, and then going into direction of a weighted number.
Councillor Humphreys?
Okay. I'll come back to that after hear a few more comments around the table. I've got a different, sort of on a different path here. Just in terms of there's the urban design guideline piece. I did not make the public planning meeting, unfortunately, I was away, but just have a bit of a concern with that. I know that you're working on it, and it's coming back to future council meeting. But I've had a little experience with a couple of individuals who are trying to get some things moved forward, and I could see staff being very specific in some areas, requiring changes in materials and, you know, requesting that they don't use a metal roof, that they use regular shingles. And I think, I don't know if others have had this, I had one in the town park area, and it was a really great design. But I think if we get into this type of detail, where we may get into some other bumps in the road. So I'm going to hear what others think around the table, but I'm not sure that this is something we need to move forward. I think the rest of what we have implementing, the changes in the zoning bylaws, I just feel that we'll be in a better position overall to protect our stable neighborhoods without going to that next step. And I think we implemented that as a sort of a stopgap until we got to this point. So I just would hope that we'd think about that one a little bit more. Other than that, I just took another question about garage size. The consultant did say that, 450 or 400 square feet. And we had asked at the last planning meeting, looking back at the notes, that we wanted the consultant to make sure we could fit 2 cars in there. And I believe staff said that we could. Just wondering, does that include a pickup truck? I've had some people asking me, like, what kind of vehicles would that fit? It's just a question.
Mr. Waters?
My understanding that a 400 square foot garage would accommodate 2 vehicles. Now, I guess it depends on the type of pickup truck you're trying to park in there. If it's an off-roader, you may have some difficulties with regards to the height.
Not worried about the height, they're worried about the length.
The
pickup bed.
Through you, Madam Chairman, the garages are designed to a certain specification in the bylaw, which accommodate 2 dwellings, and I believe they would accommodate a normal size pickup.
Okay.
Normal size pickup.
Normal size. Okay. Thank you. I guess that came forward in terms of people that live in the stable neighborhoods and they have a pickup truck, they like to park it in their garage, so they weren't sure if that was restricting. Okay. I've got some others, but I'll like to hear some other comments around the table, but thank you very much.
If I could just add a quick comment. Did the garage size not increase in size just marginally on your report?
Through you, Madam Chairman, my understanding it's always been about 400 since I've been involved in the study.
Yeah, no, it hasn't changed. 400 or 450 if it's detached, 400 if it's attached.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the just a quick comment on the garage. My garage is 20 by 19, and it won't fit a full-size pickup. Maybe a Tacoma or a mid-size, but it won't full size. Through Madam Chair, to Mr. Waters, just a few questions for you. You've heard the residents speak about methodology, and I suspect that, or maybe you have spoken to the planner regarding the methodology, and you kind of high level kind of brought that out. Can you confirm? Have you spoken about the residents' methodology and why the planner's methodology? Why they decided to pick those figures as opposed to other methodologies? Can you comment on that?
Through you, Madam Chairman, I have not specifically spoken to Mr. Palmer about the approach that's being suggested by the residents. Mr. Palmer has advised me that that is his approach in terms of the methodology that's been proposed to date in coming up with the findings, and he feels very confident that that is approach that should be used in moving forward.
Thank you. And so that methodology is a standard methodology that's used throughout the industry?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that's a customized methodology that Mr. Palmer has created for the purpose of the study. So if you need to speak to the methodology and ask questions, I suggest that you ask them to Mr. Palmer.
Okay. Thank you. Given we don't have that opportunity,
Yeah, Mr. Palmer?
can we bring him forward? Okay. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Palmer, you've heard some of the comments from the residents regarding their methodology. Can you confirm, you know, is there methodology? Can you point to some validity to the merits of their methodology?
Point of order.
Mr. Clerk? Councillor Thompson?
While I'm all for hearing Mr. Palmer speak, let's follow the procedure. And if you want him to speak, then let's waive it, because we don't call people out of the audience to a GC meeting. So happy to put it forward to waive procedural bylaw to allow Mr. Palmer to speak, but let's follow the process.
I'd like to propose a procedural bylaw waiver for 2/3.
Okay, so we need a seconder. Councillor Humphreys? I'll call the vote. Mr. Palmer, please approach your podium.
Is there a specific question about methodology that you'd like me to answer?
Councillor Kim?
I'm not sure if you've been listening to the resident in her outlining her methodology, but are you aware of how they calculated their numbers?
I am aware of how the town calculated their numbers. I am aware of some concerns from the ratepayers about methodology,
Councillor
but
Kim?
I'm not sure how they calculated their numbers.
Councillor Kim?
Do you believe that including all the homes, the recently built homes, which are significantly larger than the existing stock of homes, do you believe that they should be included in the methodology?
Yes, I do. They are part of the context of the community and should form part of the analysis.
That's it, Madam Chair. I don't have any more further questions for the planner, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Councillor Gallo? Apologies. Councillor Kim? Get back to you.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Waters, just a couple of questions regarding corner lots. If, you know, based on the what's written in R1, it states that the front house would be, or the front of the house would be about 6 meters from the street level, and that means the backyard would be potentially abutting the adjacent neighbor on the back. So how would this impact corner lots if the backyard is actually their side lot?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Madam Chairman, corner lots, first of all, the shortest lot line is the front yard. So in terms of how the two provisions will work together, the proposed zoning standards work together with the existing zoning standards for corner lots in the zoning bylaw. So you would still have the requirement for a 7.5 rear yard or 25%, whichever is greater, to apply.
So right now, in a corner lot, the backyard would be actually the side of the house. The actual back of the house is there's only 1.5 meters abutting the fence, which would be technically the backyard. So if this plan were to go through, how would that change where the backyard would be? Would the backyard stay the same in terms of it's the side yard because that's the only available space there is?
Through you, Madam Chairman, it really depends on the orientation of the footprint on the lot and on the corner lot, but there would be sufficient separation through the zoning provisions to provide for that.
Sorry, I still don't understand. The house is 6 meters from one street, 6 meters from the other, and it's 1.5 meters from the adjacent house. And there's 44 meters or 44 feet on the side of the house. So I'm telling you where the house is placed. So in layman's term, can you tell me how this new recommendation would impact corner houses, corner lots?
Through you, Madam Chair, what I'm advising is that we would use the current provisions in the zoning bylaw regarding corner lots. So we would apply the 6-meter setback from the front yard and I think it's the 3 meter from the one of the side yards. But there would be sufficient room within the rear yard to provide for the separation and placing the footprint. It's difficult to explain unless I show you a diagram, and I don't have that with me at the moment. But in terms of the size of the dwelling, the footprint, that's still relative in terms of the proposed standards that are being brought forward today. They work again together with the provisions in the zoning bylaw for corner lots.
Okay. So if I were to put it another way, whatever the GFA is agreed to, let's say 3993, the side yard setbacks, backyard setbacks, or front yard setbacks, that would not restrict further the ability to get to 3993 should a new build be put forth?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that's correct in theory. Again, it depends on the size of the lot and the dimensions you're working with. So the upset limit would be the 3993, but depending on the size of the lot, you would then have to work with those dimensions. But your footprint would be in accordance with what's being proposed in the stable neighborhoods at the moment, and the coverage as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On R1, page 16, you don't have to go to it. I'll mention it really quickly. I just take umbrage to when we see alternatives to reports, none. Just to note that we have plenty of options, and I often see that, and I often bring it to staff's attention that there are many options. We should really stop using that. In terms of the added report, I think Councillor Humphreys had asked a question about going back to public planning, and I don't believe we got an answer to that. And I think the question was, if we were to remove 10% from the weighted average, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Waters, would that trigger a public planning meeting?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Madam Chairman, you have to be careful that the intent of what was presented initially is maintained. And using 5 or 10% reduction or increase, has to be measured in terms of the intent. So, I would say that likely not, as long as the intent of what was presented is still maintained.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gallo?
And in terms of triggering another public planning, if we were to remove Royal Road from the study area, would that trigger another public planning meeting? Through
Mr.
you,
Waters.
to Mr. Waters.
Through you, Madam Chairman, no, it would not. If you added another area, it would, but removing Royal Road in terms of whatever section that is would not. I just want to sort of caution that whatever changes are made to the performance standards or the study areas, it makes it less defensible at the end of the day from the town's perspective. And if we're going to reduce a number by 10%, I think we have to have some justification behind that.
Councillor Gallo?
So staff would be seeking a justification from council if we were to move in that direction?
Through you, Madam Chairman, any reduction in the number needs to be justified. As if this bylaw gets appealed, then we have to have a reason for the 10% reduction.
On page 3 of R5, in the chart table 2, there is the weighted average. Oh, there's the whole chart, and underneath that, the first paragraph says, the consultant has reviewed the town's alternative analysis of the data and does not recommend an adjustment to their approach or methodology used to develop the zoning standards for the stable neighborhoods. I'd really like if the consultant could come up and just speak to that in terms of why they don't agree to the adjustment.
Mr. Palmer, you can approach the podium.
I carried out my assessment and my methodology on the basis of no predetermined outcome and no bias in the understanding of the data or the approach. In my mind, the use of weighting is a beginning of making decisions about what should count and what should not count, or how things that are counted should be treated in an unequal way. So in order to conserve the unbiased and unweighted nature of my analysis, I would prefer to keep it that way.
And just as I have them there, would you use that same philosophy in terms of that one, we'll call it an outlier, the 9-unit apartment building?
Well, that is, in my mind, quite a large question. And I'm going to try and answer it in a fair way because I think it deserves a fair answer. And I start back in January when I was here and I talked about legal noncompliance and the fact that the more restrictive you get or the further away you get from your current zoning standards, the more legal noncompliance you're going to create. Now, legal noncompliance has no impact on existing buildings. And in effect, you can deal with legal noncompliance generically and simply say, if you were built before the bylaw, you retain the rights that you had at that time. And you can rebuild on the basis of those rules, the numbers that go with your house. In terms of expanding the house, then we get into some trouble. So we are creating some issues about redevelopment. But we've all been aware that changing the bylaw in this way does reduce long-term development potential. Now, when you have anomalies or a contiguous cluster of legal non-complying development, again, you have a number of options to deal with that. You can rely upon the minor variance process or the rezoning process, but as you've heard tonight, there is a cost to that. Notwithstanding that you've already included a process for site plan approval, which there's a cost to as well. You could remove the cluster and leave it with the current bylaw standards. And I would only do that where there is a defined cluster of legal noncompliance, and when there's a reason for that legal noncompliance. In this case that we've heard tonight, the lot sizes are all substantially larger. It is a cluster that is definable, and in my mind there's some merit to looking at that for removal or for a different zone category.
So you were referring to Royal Road and the 19 or 20 homes, and I appreciate that because that was going to be my next question.
My point is there may be other
so the 9-story
clusters that deserve some consideration. However, my job was to create a zoning regulation for the study area, the 4 study areas, that was generic, one size fits all.
But is it fair to say that one particular property that is, I think it's fair to say, way off the chart, influences what we're trying to do in terms of the data, in terms of trying to figure out a GFA? That
Well,
influenced it.
I
I haven't done the math. I don't know how significant, but
Well, that's the point, is what's the significance of the anomaly that's included?
mhm.
I will tell you that, and I said this at the last meeting, the data provided is not perfect. And there are other concerns that I have with it, although I think it provides a reasonable baseline from which to draw some conclusions. My expectation of the inclusion of that particular building, notwithstanding that it is part of the character of the neighborhood, is that it would have a minimal effect on the data analysis. Nonetheless, I think it's fair to say that it probably should not have been included.
Mr. Council Gallo?
Am I over my time? Oh, 10 minutes. Oh, I got plenty of time. I see a bit of a dichotomy between your answer to sticking to your numbers and some outliers that you're also saying may affect that number.
I don't think one building will have an impact.
I'm sorry?
I don't think that one building will have an impact on the conclusions.
Yeah, I think most people, reasonable people would say some of the outliers isn't just that. Some of the 6,000 square foot homes might be considered. And if you add them all up, they might significantly influence the...
Well, that you're
number.
shifting from a multi-unit building to large single detached homes, which exist. And I think that all single detached homes should be considered in the analysis because they're part of the context.
But what I also hear is that you're also open to, although it says that you don't want to change it, you're also, I think, acknowledging that, looking at the broader community, and there may be some outliers that may require a second look, if I heard you correctly.
No, that's
I
not
didn't hear you.
specifically what I said. Specifically what I said is if there are clusters of legal noncompliance for a reason, they could be deleted from the study area. I'm also saying that one outlier within the study area does not change the outcome substantially. And thirdly, large existing single detached homes should stay in the data set for the purposes of generating data that underlie a decision about a planning regulation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. You're safe. You can sit down. I don't have any questions for you, Mr. Palmer. You're safe. Through you to Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, you touched on it briefly earlier. You mentioned, the potentials for appeals. I think that there's a wide variety of opinions on what we're doing here tonight, and I think that no matter what council's decision is, there will be those that will be opposed to it. Can you just speak briefly to, the appeal process and those options that are open to those residents who may not be satisfied by what council decides upon tonight?
Through
Mr.
you,
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Madam Chairman. Should council adopt the bylaw in whatever form it does, it'll be all subject to an appeal. The appeal will have to file within 20 days after council makes a decision. It's important to note that those who have an issue with the bylaw and would like to appeal it will have to have made a prior delegation or submission either at GC or council.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. And when we speak appeal, we're talking about the LPAT, or what was formerly called the OMB. My second question to you really is, at the end of the day, council make the decision and put in place the zoning standards, but it's you and your department that need to implement it. You and your department, which will need to defend it, should there be questions about future approvals. And so, based on the report in front of you, are you confident that it meets the intent of our OP, that the 4,000 square feet or 3,983 that's listed will enable compatibility within those areas?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Madam Chairman, I'm confident that what's been produced to date through Mr. Palmer's work will work with regarding protecting stable neighborhoods, maintaining the character. It's also important to note that they need to work together with those design guidelines that Mr. Palmer's firm has produced to create an appropriate built form for these neighborhoods which need to be protected.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Speaking to the design guidelines, I do share some of the concerns that have been raised before. As we've gone through this journey, a lot of times when we've heard people come to the podium and speak, or when we've looked into it ourselves, a lot of the concern has been around the size or the massing or the footprints of the homes that have been built. I haven't heard a lot with regards to materials. To me, it's more been around the sizing and the massing and the footprints. And so I do share some of the concerns that when I read through the proposed urban design guidelines, that I'm concerned that they will be used ultimately as a means to restrict people's ability to build the home that they want, that there'll be choices that they will not be allowed to pursue because a determination will be made with regards to whether or not those are acceptable materials. And so I am concerned that once you put it into print, it becomes an issue. Up to this point, and this is my comment, Mr. Waters, is just up to this point, I think that the department has managed to do a fairly good job at approving plans and bringing forth for council's approval or through their own department of managing that process and engaging the builders themselves and finding or making suggestions to improve compatibility. To me, I'm not sure we need the urban design guidelines. I think it may create more issues for us than it resolves.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Are you wanting to separate number 5 for a separate vote?
I will at the end, but for now, we'll keep the discussion going around at the table. I'll call for that at the end.
Okay, Councillor Gartner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick comment on number 4. I think we do need to have design guidelines, but I think it needs to come back to council for another discussion. So I'm hoping council will do that. Councils over the years have had lots of consultants' reports and haven't always accepted them. And I don't believe we're bound to accept them. And the biggest example of that was the consultant we hired to tell us what to do with the $35 million that we got from Hydro. We rejected that one outright. So it is in our purview to, have a consultant's report and say, well, we don't agree with it, or we don't agree with it in parts. And talking about methodology, the customized methodology that the consultant used is just one kind of methodology. Using weighting and medians are well recognized, are well used. And in particular, I think in this situation, it would have been more statistically valid to do an unweighted average, because we recognize how tiny the temperance area is and how much larger its lots are. So I think that the compromise that the residents have come to is very defendable and is very appropriate. I forgot to mention that they would like to have 9 meters, as the delegate said, 9 meters to top of roof. The official plan is silent on that. We don't have to go by what our zoning bylaw says at the moment. We can decide whatever we want. So that would be my ask, to go with on item 5, page 3, go with the weighted average and take off that 10%. Nobody is going to be happy. People are going to complain about this no matter what we do. There's going to be, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be interesting what comes after we approve this. But I'm asking council to please choose a reasonable compromise to this. The residents who have fought so hard and so long and probably would like to have between 2,500 and 3,000 square feet, and they came to us, they wanted, to take certain heights down to 7.5 meters. They've really, really come a long way, and they're trying to work with us. So that would be my ask, would be not to approve number 2 and to go with the ask of the residents. And I will be asking council to accept, I have an amendment to do with the Royal Road area. Mr. Clerk, when would that be in order?
Mr. Clerk?
Right now? Thank you. The motion would be that we for the present, we remove the pocket of 19 homes on Royal Road consisting of lots ranging from, I'm not sure what the delegate said. I think it's 70 to 100 feet frontages and at least 140 foot depth. Whatever they are exactly, they're obviously a pocket of outliers. 19 homes. It's a pretty big pocket of outliers, and this bylaw just does not cover them in any way. And I think, again, they have a very valid point. And I think had Mr. Palmer had a different set of parameters for this, to really have a good look at all of the different neighborhoods and see what was going on in them, I think that he would have brought this forward himself. So if I could have a seconder for that amendment, I would like to try it.
Someone want to second the motion? Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Do you want?
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. I just want to make sure we're clear on the amendment here. Ideally, we'd prefer an address range. Is that possible? Do we know which specific addresses on Royal Road we'd like to exclude?
We could have that for the next meeting, Mr. Clerk.
I might suggest the amendment get made at the next meeting then.
We also have, it's on Royal Road. I didn't write it down between Edward and Cameron. So
We can do that. That works.
that's okay. So it's the homes located on Royal Road between Edward and Cameron that have the very large lot frontages and depths. And bring this back to another council meeting, because this would be for bungalows. This would be in particular for bungalows, and there would have to be a height restriction.
Bring back.
Mr. Clerk?
Excuse me, Madam Chair. So the motion would be that to remove the homes from the stable neighborhood study, but bring them back to council for further
study, to remove them at present, or to remove them from this particular study and bring them back.
Would just doing the removal and then maybe dealing with that block as a separate notice of motion at a different time be okay? It's kind of removing them and asking for another study is.
I will
is a
do that. You
difficult
know
amendment.
how much I love those notices of motion.
I do.
Mr.
I
Clerk.
do know that, Council.
Okay, I would ask that council consider that. Maybe we could deal with that first, as you suggested.
Mayor Maracus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, the concern is about bungalows, so is there any way that we can just make a change just to the footprint number and not the overall cap of the GFA? Mr. Waters?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Madam Chairman, I'm not really sure what Mr. Mayor is asking. Are you asking for a size adjustment to the footprint or the coverage?
The size adjustment to the footprint, through you, Madam Chair, size adjustment to the footprint, because from what I'm hearing is the concern is about the footprint, not necessarily GFA, because if we're looking at just exempting them, then that means that we're okay with a maybe in some cases a 7,200, maybe 8,000 square foot home due to the size, if they decide to build a 2-story home.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Madam Chairman, we'd have to go back and look at what that size should be or what the coverage should be based on that housing type. The work that's been done to date has not looked at housing type. So I can't give you an answer at this point in time.
Okay, and I would have no problem adjusting the bungalow footprint size, the one-story footprint size on that road. I'm not comfortable in allowing an 8,000 square foot home in that area.
Mayor Maracas? If you can keep your comments to yourself, please. Thank you. Mayor Maracas?
Oh, that's just my questions for right now.
Pardon me?
That's all for now.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, if council moves forward with this amendment and gives I guess, a rationale for removing them, can that be utilized in appeals by other pockets of homes within this study?
Through you, Madam Chairman, the appeal to the bylaw could be based on a number of different concerns, and one of them could be being included as part of the study area, or conversely not being part of the study area.
Thank you very much. And I guess my second piece really is, as we heard, both from the consultant as well, that, there may be pockets like this. I mean, he tried to find a one-size-fits-all. If council wanted to adopt the standards as is, but then go further and ask staff or the consultant to then identify these pockets and do this in one fell swoop rather than street by street, could you not further amend the zoning bylaw down the road and remove some of those properties where these outliers are, so that we're not dealing it piecemeal but can deal with it all at once?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Madam Chairman, I agree with Councillor Thompson that a comprehensive approach to looking at the anomalies, as we call them, is the best way to go. And that doesn't prevent us from revisiting the stable neighborhoods. Over the next year. We could monitor within the next 12 months and come back with a report in terms of the activity regarding any variances required for bungalows or any types that are not sort of compatible with the existing zoning standards.
Thank you. And
Councillor
certainly I would support that approach. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I think zoning bylaws are interesting, and we haven't changed ours. I don't know. Have we ever changed ours? Well, we changed it in June 2017. But I think they're very hard to change once they're passed. I think the rationale for this particular amendment is that there are a large grouping of homes, and they are uniform in that their lots are so much larger than any other area in any of the stable neighborhoods. I don't know what Mr. Palmer thinks about that, but I don't think there's any areas in our stable neighborhoods where we have such large lots and so many of them. So I think it is in order to make this amendment. But I do think the mayor's right. I think it needs to come back to council, and we have to figure it out. So the amendment is just to take them out of the parameters of this bylaw and have it come back to council. And if anyone at the table agrees with this but doesn't like my wording, I'm open. We weren't prepared to discuss this evening, and so we don't know really what's appropriate and what we want. So I think the motion is that it just comes back to council.
Mr. Clerk?
Sorry, I'm a little bit lost here. So
It would not go back to council.
right now this portion of Royal Road would be out of the stable neighborhood, not subject to any bylaw passed by council in the future.
It would be a subsection of, it's in the stable, well, we've put it in the stable neighborhood area. It can become a subsection it could be whatever we want to call it. We could give it any kind of a name we want, as in the general stable neighborhood, but an exception zone.
Mr. Clerk?
I'm not a planner, so I don't know, but I'm sure Mr. Waters
Waters?
could come up with an idea.
Through you, Madam Chairman, just a couple things to note. First of all, that if the Royal Road section is removed as per the councillor's recommendation, it falls back to the R3 zoning, right, and those existing permissions today. Second of all, if council does adopt the Stable Neighborhoods bylaw without without Royal Road in this section, then it's still subject to the interim control bylaw. So we would have to repeal that following the adoption and enforcement of the bylaw, because if the zoning bylaw becomes appealed, then the interim control bylaw still remains in force until the appeal is dealt with at the LPAT.
Councillor Gartner?
I would like council to think on this till next week and find a way to do this without causing any unforeseen negative situations for us or for the residents.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to, so just to comment on Councillor Thompson's suggestion, through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Waters, you mentioned that it would be permissible to pass the recommendations and at a later date have a consultant or staff identify these outlier pockets and then come to a decision at that time whether we exempt those areas. You mentioned that you'll observe all the applications, I would imagine building applications coming in, but if we have stable neighborhood provisions here that are in place, why would anyone come in with an application that is significantly larger than what is permitted? So how would you know what type of outlier applications would come in when no one would bother doing such a thing anyway?
Through you, Madam Chairman, we would look at the minor variance applications that have been submitted and see if any have been within the stable neighborhoods area and determine then what kind of variances they're looking for, and then as required make the necessary adjustments to the bylaw. Through you, Madam Chairman, again, and that will be subject to a public process.
Councillor Kim?
Okay, thank you. Okay. I mean, a minor variance, we're only looking at 10%, so it may not be indicative of how large or, won't necessarily give strong indication of the build form or the massing and those types of matters, but I see that you want to comment.
Through you, Madam Chairman, I'm not sure where the 10% comes from the minor variance, but a variance is a variance if it doesn't conform to the bylaw. We would monitor, for instance, if there is a demand for bungalows, and that in an area where a larger footprint can be accommodated for a single-story dwelling, and a variance would be required in order to exceed what was approved by the stable neighborhood zoning bylaw, we would report on that, for instance.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's news to me. So I thought a minor variance actually had a number, because I've heard that said in many occasions with discussions with staff, but there's no number to it. A variance is a variance. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gallo?
I agree that this particular road doesn't necessarily fit the criteria that that's being proposed. I'm disappointed that we haven't done this work prior to this late of a stage, that we haven't identified these neighborhoods that would significantly be impacted, or these pockets, because I agree it should be comprehensive, and we should have probably done this study before, and this particular road should have come out of that. I suspect we've been going at this for quite a while, that there aren't very many other ones. Otherwise, we would have identified them. So if we do a study, I'm really not sure what else is going to come out of it in terms of any other pockets. Surely by now they would have been identified. Why Royal Road? I don't know. I don't know why. But I'm in support of this. I'm also in support of revisiting this and perhaps addressing bungalows or the square footage of bungalows. I suspect if that was larger, maybe we wouldn't even have to go through this on larger lots. But as it stands, I'm in support of this.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Councillor.
The intent is to get this done right away, to figure this out certainly within the month, and make a bylaw covering it. I don't think it's rocket science. I think we can come to a conclusion on this quickly.
Mayor Maracus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, can you just exempt this portion just from the footprint and leave the rest on there?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that's an approach we can look at, yes.
Well, I think that maybe a majority of us would be more comfortable with that. I would be in favor of that. So that would be just to exempt the footprint aspects of the 2,500 on a one-story building going on that property. So we exempt it, so it would still sit at the 35% lot coverage for a one-story. But if they build a two-story, then it triggers into the GFA. I love that. And I'm fine with that. And I think that's a fair compromise.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we have another week to talk about it. Maybe, Mr. Waters, if you can find out for us 100% for sure through you, Madam Chair, and we can have that information for us next week, and we can provide that information to the residents as well. I think we would all appreciate that.
Through you, Madam Chairman, we can draft the bylaw to exclude the footprint to apply to that specific geography, and bring that bylaw forward with the balance of the proposed standards, depending on what happens tonight, of course.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
So I won't be in favor of the way it's in front of us right now, but if you want to maybe remove it in next week, we can revisit it.
This is your third time, I think, no?
Going to support this. So the intention is, if I take this off the table today, that we work on it between now and the council meeting. We come up with something we think is reasonable and acceptable, and then we can put it into the bylaw.
Mr. Waters?
Through you,
Next week?
Madam Chairman, if all goes well tonight, I would like to present the bylaw for adoption next week with that change that we're speaking to right now.
Okay. I agreed to take it off the table, and my seconder agrees.
Mayor Marcus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Waters, would you need direction from us tonight to specifically do that?
Through you, Madam Chairman, I believe so, yes.
So, Madam Chair, Councilor Gartner, if you're okay to change the wording, that we say that we exempt this pocket of 19 homes of Royal Road between Cameron and Edward Streets from the footprint, and if it's just specific to that, and we give that direction, and next week when it comes, if it's not desirable to us, then we can look at what we have to do. But I think that's the direction that I would be in favor of, and I'll be supportive of that.
So to be clear, the building footprint, the GFA that we decide on for the whole area will be allowed to be built on as the building footprint. Is that what you're saying? No.
Mayor Marakis.
Thank you. So, through you, Madam Chair. So if someone is to build a one-story, a bungalow, on one of these 19 homes, what we're saying is that we would exempt it from the 2,500 square foot footprint that's being proposed, and it would stick to the regular standard of the R3, which would be a 35% lot coverage. But if that same person on that property decides to build a two-story home, then that would trigger the GFA that we decide on and to move forward with.
Can we just refer to Mr. Clerk, and then he can explain maybe the procedure here so we don't get off topic here?
Through you, Madam Chair, it doesn't sound like the consensus being reached right now. I mean, what we could do is, Councilor Gardner, as you were talking about before, withdraw the amendment right now, wait until next week, sort this all out, get something properly worded, and then if council's still satisfied that we can pass the bylaw, we'll amend the bylaw at the time to include the direction from the report.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm always concerned when we try and craft things on the fly. Through you to Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, I know your intent would be to bring the bylaw forth at the next meeting, but it could still be brought forth at the June 25th council meeting for adoption. Should council wish to wait a week and maybe this and any other amendments that might come along between now to work it out?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that's absolutely correct, yes.
I would rather proceed. Yes, there's a rush, but no, there's not. I mean, 2 more weeks. I just, it would give all members of council a chance to perhaps discuss in a little bit more detail, take a look at the removal of the footprint, rather than try and craft this on the fly. That would be my suggestion, is if Councillor Gardner is still open to pulling her amendment, and let's have that conversation and introduce the right amendment next week, and then the bylaw, you know, either with Mr. Waters bringing it forward or on the 25th.
Councillor, are you okay by retracting the amendment now and going through with Councillor Thompson's suggestions? Councillor Humphries, you second that? Okay. We remove that now. Back to the original motion. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. We did have a little bit of discussion around the table. I don't know if we've come to any conclusions or discussions that we accept the staff refinements as presented in this report, or do we consider the weighted average less 10% as per the public input? And I understand that this isn't a new calculation, that it is somewhere in the report that mentions as actual consideration. I don't know if that's accurate, through Madam Chair, to Mr. Waters, that this is not a new concept, it's actually an example. I can't quite find it, but I mean, one of the things I feel comfortable with is the fact that this will not go to another public planning meeting. It's not a huge, deviation from the consultant's report and through staff's recommendations, but is this somewhere in the report that I've missed?
Mr. Waters?
I may not be articulating it properly.
Through you, Madam Chairman, I'm not aware of that a term being used. I'm looking at Mr. Palmer, and he's shaking his head as well.
Table 2.
Councillor Humphries.
So through you, Madam Chair, I'm looking at Table 2, and do you see it anywhere? See if you can help me, right? Look at this, George. So that is what we're talking about. Okay. Okay, thank you, through Madam Chair. Yeah, just back to the public's recommendations in terms of considering this average and just wait, the average less the 10%. I'm comfortable with that. I don't know what the thoughts are around the table, or do we just vote and see how that goes and then bring another one forward? Or I can make an amendment to change that, and we can discuss it around the table at this point and decide what we do, if that's all right. I know Councillor Gardner spoke to that quite a bit.
Are you asking to add an amendment to the
I'd like to add an
original
amendment
recommendation?
to the original recommendation to have the weighted average 3,849 less 10% as a consideration.
Do I have a seconder?
It's what you had been asking about.
I want to second that.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Has to be second. Mr. Clerk?
I think as I wouldn't replace it, I would suggest that the amendment, that the weighted average less 10% for gross floor area, be used for the stable neighborhood study. I think that amendment's in order.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Just if I can just mention that Mr. Water did mention that there would not have to be in the public planning, but go ahead.
Mr. Clerk?
I have nothing further to add unless the director thinks it's requires another public planning meeting. The council should know that.
Oh. Mr. Waters? We were waiting for Mr. Waters' a comment. We're not? Okay. Let's speak to the amendment. Councillor Gardner?
I said, this is not what in the best of all possible worlds, this is not what I would be fighting for, but this is what the residents graciously, after all of this time, have said they will accept. And so that is the amendment that you're putting forward. But the other part, Councillor Humphreys, to what the delegate said was 9 meters to top of roof. They want 9 meters to top of roof because it is the massing and the height that is going to make the real difference.
Councillor Gardner, can we just speak to the motion that's on the floor?
Okay, I was hoping Councillor Humphreys would amend it. That's a separate amendment. Anyway, I've said what I think. I think this council I think that we should accept what these residents want.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? That fails. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Waters, if we were to not go ahead with the urban design guidelines, now I do believe that there's a section of one of the neighborhoods that require design guidelines, but I don't think it's necessary for all the neighborhoods. And I believe you mentioned in the past that if we were to, whether it be design guidelines or putting some of the actual numbers in terms of GFA and footprints, and start cutting up neighborhoods, that's when it goes back to public planning. Can you just confirm that, please?
Through you, Madam Chairman, yes, if we start to identify different performance standards for each of the 4 neighborhoods, then we're into a new public planning process, or a continued public planning process, I should say.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you. And if we were to not include the urban design guidelines, and just similar to your comments earlier about taking our time and identifying areas that have that are outliers, like perhaps Royal Road. Once this stable neighborhoods recommendations are passed, is it feasible then, say in the fall, to come back with a motion to identify that segment of a stable neighborhood and work on design guidelines at that point?
Through you, Madam Chairman, I just want to sort of understand what the councillor's asking. So the councillor's asking for us or for staff to essentially review the Royal Road area and come up with a different set of performance standards and a specific set of guidelines.
It's not for the Royal Road. I haven't identified what that neighborhood is, but if we had, let's say, Regency Acres or Town Park, and we have, let's say, 6 square blocks of identified areas that we felt needed to have those urban design guidelines, but none of the other stable neighborhoods, we don't want to do that. Can we do that in September, and after we pass the stable neighborhood eventually, and have design guidelines in place for just a section of one neighborhood?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Madam Chairman, we would have to look at the stable neighborhood study area comprehensively to identify the outlying areas. I'm not sure how many there are, if there are any. And then we would have to look at certain, well, depending on their existing performance standards, whether they're still appropriate or not. And then we could draft the custom design guidelines for those areas, or use the existing ones that are currently been drafted for stable neighborhoods. But in terms of timing, September likely could be achieved. I don't think we'd be into a public process by September. I think we're into a post-September sort of meeting on that. We may be done by the end of the year. We may not.
Councillor Kim.
Okay, thank you. And I won't be cryptic. I mean, frankly, the Town Park area, the core Town Park area, certainly, I feel warrants to have urban design guidelines or architectural controls in place. But from that to the stable neighborhood has evolved into having architectural controls in pretty well a third of the town, which I feel is not appropriate. So my question is, seeing that we can't do these things piecemeal, my desire is to not move ahead with the urban design guidelines, but I don't want to, but I do feel that it's necessary for the core part of Town Park, which I want to initiate that in due course. And so that's what I'm asking.
Okay. Through you, Madam Chairman, my opinion on the design guidelines is that they're a beneficial tool to both staff and the designer of the addition or the new build. They provide the appropriate direction in terms of what we'd like to see regarding built form, roof lines, some of the massing, and the materials. They're a suggestion, and they're used to inform the design of a dwelling. But they're also to protect these special areas, which you've identified as stable neighborhoods. So I think they're an important tool for staff to have. And you've adopted a scope site plan process for stable neighborhoods. So if we don't have these guidelines, then it becomes very difficult for staff to try to improve what's being proposed by the designer. It's a negotiation at the end of the day, and the guidelines are not policy. They basically inform staff's review of the plans and also help the designer kind of move in the direction that we'd like him to see in order to protect these neighborhoods.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, and I understand that perspective. And my concern, as Councillor Thompson stated earlier, is that sometimes the guidelines can become the rule. I don't want. We're not going to be there in terms of, how strongly is the language or the voice of staff going to be when someone comes in with their submission, and staff will say, well, in this neighborhood, these designs is recommended to look like this. We can certainly discourage certain applicants from, going ahead with it. And so that's the gray area that I'm just having problems with. At this time, I would like to make an amendment to strike the architectural controls, or AKA urban design guidelines, for moving ahead.
So, Councillor Kim, we're gonna separate number 4 for voting.
Okay, you
Okay.
separate it? Well,
Yep.
That's fine. That
We'll
this is the
vote
same
on
thing.
it separate. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Maracus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, number 4, it's just speaking to the fact that staff finalize the urban design guidelines and report back to a future council meeting, which means that something's going to come back to us, and at that point, if council doesn't like what they see, they can vote it down. Is that correct?
That is quite correct. Through Madam Chairman, that is correct. Yes.
So, Councillor Kim, Councillor Thompson, I share some of those same concerns as far as design guidelines. I don't want to be restrictive when it comes to those design guidelines, because I do feel some of the same thoughts as far as they can tend to become, in essence, policy. Some will take it as policy where they're just guidelines. But I think having staff develop something, hearing our concerns, and then bringing it back to this table and allow us an opportunity to look at them and make a decision of whether we want to go forward with it or not, at that point, I think that's at least a good way to have staff deal with it and bring it to us, and let's take a look and then have that conversation at the table once again. Right now, we don't know what's going to be in front of us when staff bring it to us. So let's see what they're going to bring to us and then make that decision at that time. I would at least like to see us have that opportunity to see what staff are going to present us in those guidelines before we outright say no to them.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Member Maracus. And while I understand your point, it's my understanding that staff are already utilizing these guidelines on planning decisions every day today. Even though they're not approved, even though they're not finalized, it is still guiding their decision-making process. And so while we wait for that to happen, it continues to exacerbate the issue. And so I'd rather we not move forward and continue the discussion of maybe how we can. But at the end of the day, to me, the policy is in our OP. It speaks to compatibility. And let's give our staff the flexibility to manage this issue like they've done for all these years, and continue to give them that latitude to be able to make those decisions around compatibility. At the end of the day, I don't want to stifle design. I want to encourage it. I happen to live on the eastern side of Aurora, off of Bayview, and people say all the time, every fourth house looks the same. And I have friends who live on the other side of Aurora, and they say, what I love is that the houses are different. That's why they moved into that area. And I want to continue to have that viability and flexibility and let staff have the greatest amount of latitude to determine what is compatible or not. I think guidelines become policy. They then become restrictions. And so I'd rather vote it down and go back to the drawing board about what we may or may not want to do, because I really don't like the materials section. That's my concern. And I already know that they're having those conversations about it, utilizing these guidelines that are not in place.
Mayor Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe this is my second time, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Second time.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, you're right. I don't like the material aspect of it as well. And I think that staff have been doing a great job by utilizing ROP. I mean, I always believe ROP is an excellent document that guides the vision of our town and allows staff to come up with what is compatible within our communities. You know, what we're doing in front of us tonight is looking at how we can reevaluate some of that zoning to better allow for that compatibility within those neighborhoods, to ensure that we keep the character within those neighborhoods, to keep why people have moved to those areas and what make them desirable. And that's what we're doing here tonight. You know, when we speak about the number, you know, in the 3983, you know, we've heard from everyone. The number's different. Everywhere, anyone we talk to, someone says 7,200, someone doesn't want to change, someone wants it changed, someone wants it more restrictive. At the end of the day, we need to strike a balance, and that's what we've been doing for over 2 years, as from last term and into this term, and we've been trying to find that balance. We hired a consultant, an expert planner, to come here and develop a methodology that they put forward that puts planning principles in place and allows us to have a number, and that's going to allow us to keep that character of our communities. It's going to allow us to evolve and grow, but yet keep that character and maintain the desirability of people wanting to come to those areas. I mean, at the end of the day, people move to those areas, you're right, because every house looks different. But they also move to the area because they have room in those areas, because the houses aren't on top of each other. And so that's what we're trying to achieve here. But if we become too restrictive, that's also a problem. And I think what we have in front of us is a balance. I think it's proper. I think it's going to take us to what we've been working towards. And I think this achieves the goal that we as a council are trying to do, which is allow the community within those stable neighborhoods to grow and evolve, but be appropriate development. So I'll be in favor of this. I mean, you might have convinced me to vote against that number 4 clause, but we'll see when the vote comes up.
All right, any other questions, other comments? Pardon? Okay, so we're going to split the number 4 out of the vote, and we shall vote from 1 to 3. So can I call the vote? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And number 4. All right, so we're going to call the vote on number 4. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. It's 9 o'clock, so at this time we're going to call a health break. Thank you. Council? Okay.
One more to sit down.
Okay, so item 2, can I get someone to put the staff recommendation on the floor? Councillor Kim? Second by Councillor Thompson. Any questions or comments on item 2? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, I'm wondering if there is a, some type of system in place. I know these particular, through you to Mr. Downey, I know these particular courts have significant, I'm going to say, for-profit lessons on them, and which, you know, add wear and tear and all that kind of stuff, and quite frankly, take away from others. And I'm wondering if, do we have signage or do we have a policy in place that somehow regulates that? I mean, I don't have a problem with some of that, but if it's excessive and if it takes away from other users, I think we should address it. And in particular, in this case, if there's significant additional wear and tear on the courts, then we should somehow address it.
Mr. Downey?
Or, sorry, I don't know to who, but
Ms. McDougall?
to Robin.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. With the tennis courts, there is a process and a policy as far as permitting out. We do permit out tennis courts, but typically in a scenario where there are 2 tennis courts, we only permit 1. So there's always 1 left for the public. When there's a scenario of 3 courts, we'd only permit out 2. So there's always something left for the public. As far as signage goes, that is an area that we could work on to improve, as far as the communicating to the public how somebody might be there that's teaching lessons and the formality of them actually being there. That part I'm not sure if is in place, but certainly we can look into that moving forward.
Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. And do you know offhand whether we permit David English Park, if it has been permitted in the past?
Ms. McDougall?
Those emails went back and forth today, and I understand, yes, we do.
Have we had any residents have expressed any issues with the extent to which we permit and restricting them from using the courts?
Through Madam Mayor, or Madam Chair, the only comments that I am aware of are the comments of today that we had going back. As far as history, I'm not sure that our manager of business services may have had some comments, but otherwise today it was the first that I'd heard of an issue.
And do we, through you, Madam Chair, do we take into account any additional wear and tear that these for-profit organizations have on public courts?
Ms. McDougall?
Through Madam Chair, the fact that they pay fee to rent the property would help offset some of those operating costs with wear and tear, where there is no recovering of public fee or public use, where in rentals, we do charge them a fee to use those courts.
Do we know what the fee is?
Not offhand, I'm sorry.
I'd love to know if it's nominal or if it's significant. That would help basically contribute to this, whether if there's significant wear and tear because of that use. I think it's appropriate that they help pay for that. So maybe by next week. Thank you very much.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, the email back and forth was with myself because, I'm an avid tennis player, and so is my son. And so I happened to be there on Saturday at David English Park, and there was tennis lessons going on with an instructor covering both courts. And so I just automatically thought that they had permits, and so I left and went to Fleury Park after Thomas Coates was too busy, and there was lessons going on there, but there's 1 court out of the 3 that was available, so I was able to use before I got kicked off. And so I did send an email to staff asking whether these instructors had permits, and the one in David English did not have a permit for Monday, and we're going to confirm on Fleury Park. So certainly, myself as a resident, I know other residents have experienced it. They just assume that they have permits, but not all of them do. But some certainly don't take advantage of that, and they get their permits. So I'm glad that staff is looking into that, and I think when this recommendation came back to us maybe 2-3 months ago, and I was in favor of postponing this another year or so, my basis was based on the fact that when I played late in the season last year, it was almost empty all the time, and so if there was not that many people using it, maybe we can hold off and save some funds right now and just postpone it. But now that we're in the tennis season, I'm seeing that a lot of usage is happening. And given that if we don't do the repair and placement right now, then if it's going to go up to 100,000 in potential damages, then I'd be all in favor of staff recommendation for the improvement for the 20,000. Thank you.
Councillor Garland, for the first time.
I would be very interested in knowing how many people from outside of the subdivision use that court, but that's not something we could easily find out. Mr. Downey may remember this discussion. It had to do with Fleury Park, I believe, and the tennis courts in Fleury Park. And at one point, they were permitted out to an instructor to the extent that the public just really, there wasn't enough time for the public to use them. And because tennis is a pickup sport.
Councillor Gardner, can we just speak to the motion on the floor, the report? We're discussing whether or not we want to approve the...
I understand, but it's been mentioned at the table, so I would just like to reinforce that these are public courts for public use. And in my opinion, instructors shouldn't be using them at all. But if they are, as you said, Ms. McDougall, we have to be very sure there's enough space and time for the residents. I don't think we have any choice but to do this. I'm very sorry to be in this position because I have a feeling that this is mostly used as was promised to this subdivision for their use. I think it's probably mostly being used by the people in the subdivision. But I think we have no choice. It is our court, and we just can't let it deteriorate.
Councillor Gallo, second time.
Thank you. Just to be clear, I had no idea there was you were sending emails. There was no setup or anything. I had no idea you were saying. In addition to the discussion about paying, I don't know whether it's feasible to track these types of things or not, to see how much is being contributed to towards this type of cost from renting the facility. I did see an email from someone about the I guess the condition of the asphalt, and I'm just wondering whether this is unique to this particular site in terms of its degradation, or is it common? I think it's about 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old.
Ms. McDougall? Mr. Downey?
Me this time. These courts did prematurely degrade. It has more to do with the subsoil and some of the conditions related to that. It's not unique within Aurora. Aurora soils are challenging, to say the least. We've had perhaps our biggest issues at McMahon with their tennis surface, but this isn't unusual. It is somewhat premature. However, when we did see it, we felt we needed to get this addressed as soon as possible, which is why you saw it as a capital item.
Councillor Gallo?
I guess we're way beyond any warranties or anything like that in terms of going back to whoever originally did it. And just as a note, I think many people use it from across the town. It's not a secret anymore. It was at the beginning, but it's not a secret anymore that's there.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And we go to item 3. Someone want to put the staff recommendation on the floor? Councillor Gartner, someone second? Need a seconder? Councillor Humphreys? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call the vote. Oh,
Could someone just summarize the work and the connection to the trail, the off-road connection to the trail? I don't know if that's still on the record, or I know there was an easement there, but I'm sorry, I'm not up to speed on it.
Through you, Madam Chair, this report wasn't addressing that, so I'm going to give you a bit of a history lesson that really has not much to do with this application. But the Quick Copy Trail was a trail that was identified, and the reason it was called Quick Copy Trail is because Quick Copy owned it about 25 years ago. We had, and when they purchased it, we had created an easement across the property for a trail. And we had a 20-year period in which to exercise our option to build a trail within that easement. Prior to that easement being released, it was sold. The new owner had taken on the responsibility of that easement. We approached the owner to negotiate a relocation of that easement, to relocate the trail in a more appropriate location from a pedestrian point of view as well as construction point of view, and we felt it was also benefit to the property owner itself because it somewhat separated the property from one side to another. Before we got that completely done, it was sold again. We started the renegotiations with that particular owner, finally got the easement taken care of, and got approvals to move forward with a trail within that new easement. That trail has been constructed. It's well used. It releases out onto Yonge Street at this point from Willow Farm. During the discussion of our trail system, and it was particularly brought up by a delegate, Klaus Warrenborg, wanting a trail, an off-road trail parallel to Yonge Street. Because we had simply brought it out to the sidewalk on Yonge, and he wanted it off-road instead of on the sidewalk. Council agreed with that, asked us to move forward with placing an off-road trail within the easement, or excuse me, within the property, the road allowance. We had to get approvals from the region with regards to that. I know it's a long story, but forgive me. So we had to get approvals from the region. While that took place, this property sold again, and it was sold to St. Andrews College, who are the present owners of the property. In discussion with St. Andrews College, they had some concerns with regards to that trail, and they had expressed those concerns. However, we had not received approvals from the region at that point, so we didn't know whether or not we were or were not going to be able to move forward with this off-road trail, since that section of Yonge Street is actually responsibility of the region. Then just before that, soon after that, I apologize, there was a property at the corner of the entranceway into St. Andrews College that was owned privately, and that was sold once again to St. Andrews College. And with that, they created a discussion with the new plan with regards to potentially a boardwalk within this area. So we met with St. Andrews College, made a presentation to council, and council approved the installation of a boardwalk within the road allowance adjacent to St. Andrews College from our present location of where the trail comes out onto Yonge Street to the corner of St. John and Yonge Street. The region has given us approval to move forward with that. So we have received regional approval, and we do have approval of the adjacent landowner. We also got approval for funding. So the region has recently contacted us and said, well, because part of the project was to do some improvements at the corner of St. John and Yonge Street, they have an application process for funding, which this report addresses. And so it's an opportunity to get additional funding in order to support some of the work that's taking place within this, primarily to deal with corner improvements at St. John and Yonge Street. And we'd like to do those corners improvement for two reasons, or a few reasons. First of all, it's fairly old, and it really does need upgrading. It's an entrance into Aurora, and I think we could really upgrade it and make it look much better. And we now have a partner in St. Andrews College who also have an interest in making sure this corner has some presence. So with that, the region has informed us that we have an opportunity to get 1/3 funding. So we've identified the cost or isolated the costs of the corner improvements. And this report, we need a council resolution that supports the improvements to the corner as part of our application process to the region. If we are successful, we'll get approximately $150,000 from the region in support of that work. With that, we can do the boardwalk and the corner improvements within our allocated budget. If we don't get it, if we still want to do the improvements, we will be over budget, or potentially over budget. We haven't gone to tender. And if we do, in order to obtain award of that tender, we may be coming back to council for additional funding. But that is in the event that we don't get funding from the region, but we have no indication from them at this time that we wouldn't get it. So that's a long, maybe, explanation to your question, but it's the best way of getting you to the point of where we are today.
Councillor Gallo.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Downey. I was aware up to the approvals, and I was aware Klaus wanted it off-road, so I'm super happy that we were able to accommodate an off-road trail there. It's been a long time waiting. And the addition to the corner, I think, is fantastic and has my full support.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you answered my question, Mr. Downey, but just to reiterate then, my question was, the proposed project funding was $887,000 and the approved budget was $815 for a shortfall of $72. And so if the region and its program didn't step in, then we would have been underfunded. But I think you answered the question in that you would have come back and asked council for an increase in the budget.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we identified that in the financial implications part of the report. So in the bottom of page 3 of 5, we say, in the instance should the budget be deemed to be insufficient, staff will bring a report to council requesting the necessary increase to the total budget for the capital project.
Councillor Kim.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Any other questions and comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I agree this is a long time coming. Trails Committee worked on this for a while as well. And, we had discussions about it, and I'm happy to see this moving forward. I just have one question through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, with an entrance sign or signage, does that mean that we won't be able to put an election sign there?
Mr. Downey?
I'm just asking for my fellow colleagues, that's all.
Well, my understanding, that's a regional corner anyway, so you'd have to deal with the region on that.
So I'll ask Mayor Scarpitti and the rest of them when I see them.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, call to vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right, on to the last item. Transfer servicing allocation application for removal of H holding provision. Any questions or comments? Or someone who want to put the report on the floor? Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kim. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, call to vote. Those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Perfect. Okay. Okay, new business. Councillor Gallo, any new business? Councillor Thompson? Councillor Humphries? Gardner? Apologies. Councillor Kim? Councillor Humphries? Mayor Maracus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very quick. I have two things. First, I just wanted to update everyone in regards to how many municipalities have passed the motion to oppose Bill 108. We're currently sitting over 40 municipalities representing, we're just shy of 50% of the population in Ontario. And like I said, it continues to grow on a daily basis. So hopefully, once again, the province is listening. Second is Mr. Gardner, this is your last meeting as acting director, and so we want to thank you for all the work that you did, especially during budget. I know it's a team effort, but we thank you for coming here and sitting here and being hounded by each and every one of us on a weekly basis. So thank you for everything that you've done in filling in. You've done a tremendous job, and we appreciate everything you've done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Mayor Maracus, and congratulations on the I guess the Bill 108 and getting down there and communicating with everybody. Not yet, but you've been fighting pretty hard and talking with a lot of councillors across the Canada or the province rather, and trying to get the wheels turning on this. So we all really appreciate everything that you're doing for the community. Thank you, Councillor Gallo.
Sorry, I did want to mention. Most of us were at FCM this past weekend, and I found it exceptional in terms of the areas that I wanted to focus in on, public art and maintaining our heritage and how to go about maintaining our heritage. So I'm going to be working on those areas and hopefully bring some ideas to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. All right, so no other new business, so I guess we're going to motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Humphries. That's it. All those in favors? Opposed? That carries. Yay!